Gothic 1 Remake has a weird problem. It can look blurry, smeary, and ghostly before we even touch frame generation. So today I tested the vanilla image, TSR FSR 3.1.4, XeSS 1.3.1, and then FSR4 through OptiScaler to find the cleanest way to play Gothic 1 Remake on AMD-based systems. Hey guys, welcome back to GeekJ, where we make tech tutorials and gaming simpler and better. So today we are optimizing Gothic 1 Remake so we get the best visuals with the best performance possible. As always, we need to start with the game in its completely vanilla form, because if we do not know what the game is doing by default, we cannot tell whether our changes are actually helping. As you can see, the display options, we're gonna just brush through them. It's pretty simple. As you can see, it's a 1080p monitor. I'm playing in borderless window. I do not have VSync on, and I do not use a frame rate limit because I will be using the one in OptiScaler later on in the video. And you can set the field of view and gamma, however best suiting your eyes, because this really depends on your screen as well. So if we move on to the graphics settings, this is what the game defaults on for me. So Upscaler is off by default. Motion blur intensity and all of these post-processing effects are automatically set to these values. I didn't touch anything so far. And as you can see, the quality preset it is using is the Gothic very high quality preset. The only thing I will disable over here is motion blur, because I really dislike it, especially in this game as well. It's really badly implemented. For context, my system is an AMD Ryzen 7 5800X3D, 32 GB of DDR4, 3600 megatransfers per second CL16 memory, and an RX 6800 XT. It's a 16 GB video card. It's from the RDNA 2 family of AMD GPUs, pretty old in today's standards, but it is still kind of a beast. And the game is running from a Crucial P3 1TB NVMe SSD. And this is important because the RX 6800 XT is right in the recommended spec neighborhood for this game. So this is not a potato setup trying to do magic. This should be a very reasonable PC for Gothic 1 Remake. Let me go back over here and let me load this little save I made, particularly for testing. I will be using the old camp. And I think basically the old camp is a great benchmark location because it hits the GPU and CPU at the same time. Like, we have the dense lighting, we have foliage, wood structures, NPCs walking around and following routines, and enough movement to expose ghosting, basically. Shimmer, frame pacing issues, and all that, you know, good stuff. Without recording, performance usually stays above 70 FPS, and this is the case right now as well with this no Upscaler native experience we're having. Just keep in mind that while recording with OBS, there is always a performance hit, so keep that in mind when you compare with your own numbers, even if you have an identical system to mine. And here's the strange part. Even with upscaling turned off, we have no upscalers on. And even on Gothic preset, which is the very high preset, the image looks smudgy, unfortunately, as you can see over here. Let me demonstrate. And with motion blur, this is even worse, by the way. But yeah, let me show you how this looks on a native. Yeah. As you can see, we're dropping below 60 over here. So as you can see, there is significant ghosting, even though we don't have any frame generation technology turned on. And especially if the background is foliage or a dark background, it's very, very apparent, as you can see over here. Let me demonstrate. So we are getting a lot of ghosting, unfortunately. And this is with motion blur disabled. And even if you tweak sharpening, or change a bunch of obvious stuff. None of these fix the core problem. Basically, this means that we are seeing ghosting before frame generation is even involved, which is a huge clue that the default temporal anti-aliasing path is not where we want it to be. It's like the built-in TAA is just doing horrendous things to our image. You can see there's a lot of pixel instability, a lot of shimmering, especially over there behind the wooden walls where the light passes through. We have a lot of aliasing, even though this is native resolution, so there's no upscaling happening. The grass over here is also looking like a big smudge fest, and when it's moving you can see there's a lot of ghosting involved, so that is a pretty bad showing for no upscaler just with TAA. So now we're going to test the built-in upscalers and see if any of them clean this up. I'm gonna do Unreal Engine's 5 own TSR, and we're starting with a TSR at native resolution. As you can see over here, we have a lot of options. We're gonna go with native, and we're gonna see some stuff. We're gonna have some clues over here. So let's go back to loading our exact same save file, and immediately the image is cleaner than the default no upscaling mode. The heavy ghosting is almost completely gone, especially if I move the character over here. As you can see, even behind the dark background over here, it's not that prevalent, or even there. I don't think it's there anymore. And this is basically a confirmation that the default TAA solution is the real problem here with the ghosting. And this is something we see too often, unfortunately, with a lot of Unreal Engine 5 games. And even if you're not trying to upscale from a low resolution, using a native upscaler mode can be the correct way to get a cleaner temporal image. So with TSR native, the smudginess is mostly gone, but now we get a different trade-off. Shadows look grainier, skin tones can look noisier, so as you can see over here on the character, especially when we're moving the hairs of the characters, main character and the other characters, as you can see, look very grainy and noisy, and when we move it's not stable enough, even though this is native. The whole image has more visible instability in darker details, unfortunately, but still this is much better than the default image, and it even performs slightly better in my testing in a lot of different locations. Let's go back into this alley, see if we get the same problem with the dip below 60 FPS, and we did. But it does feel smoother over here. And as you can see, yeah, the characters look like over sharpened. So if we go into settings over here and graphics, you can see that for some reason it defaults to 100% sharpening intensity. Okay, now we can move to TSR quality. So I'm gonna move this to quality, not ultra quality. As you can see, the sharpening intensity is adjusting itself. We could do something by ourselves, but I think most people are not going to do that. They're just going to select a preset and leave it as is. So TSR quality gives us around 72 frames per second average in this same areas over here, but the image gets significantly softer, and then we get shimmering becoming a lot more noticeable. So if we look at the foliage over there in the distance, and at the like gaps in the planks over there at the wall behind us, and even at the tarps over there that are on the wall, even when I'm not touching the camera, you can see that the shimmering is a lot more intense over here, and we get a lot of weirdness for some reason. It's not just the foliage. Whenever light passes through small geometry, we get this weird shimmering and pixel instability in the old camp over here. And now with camera movement, we also start seeing haloing around the characters, as you can see over here, and it will become a more prominent issue the lower we go with the upscaling. So yeah, not a really big jump in performance, unfortunately. As you can see, we did get a dip again, but we do get a few more FPS. I'm guessing it really depends. Like, you will see this is a repeating issue with this game. Even though we are using upscalers, we don't really get much of performance back. It's still better than the original ghosting, but it is still pretty distracting having the halo, by the way. Now let's go with TSR performance. As you can see, it lowers the sharpening intensity even less for some reason, and we're gonna go back and then let's completely restart the game just to make sure that settings are applied. So yeah, the image, as you can see, takes a really heavy hit over here. Foliage and grass look rough. Textures lose almost all of their detail over here, especially on the character's clothes. Even his skin textures in the distance kind of go bye-bye, as you can see. And even the grass right beside us looks very weird, especially with the wind movement. The whole image looks kind of blurrier, a lot more soft. And it is very unstable, as you can see. I am recording right now, but before, in this exact same scene, we had like 74 FPS on quality. Now we have 77. So it barely improves our FPS. So basically, this is just giving us all the downsides of a low internal resolution without the upside we actually wanted, which is more FPS. And let me run around so you can see what is really happening over here. A lot of weirdness in the grass, a lot of weirdness in the foliage. As you can see, we get a lot of shimmering over there and instability. Yeah, the shimmering behind us is even worse, which makes sense because this is trying to do stuff from a very low resolution. I'm guessing 540p. The character looks smudgy, aliased edges on everything. Like the cables or ropes above over here look very weird. So yeah, not a very good showing. So basically, for TSR, native is usable. Quality is okay if you need the frames, like the 2 frames we gain or something. And performance is not something I would recommend here because it just looks awful and we don't get any significant performance uplift. So next up is the built-in FSR 3.1.4 option, as you can see over here. If we go into the options and then graphics, so this is what we get with FSR. And this is the only option that basically gives us a frame generation option, even though this is FSR 3.1, so that means it should be an uncoupled frame generation. It is coupled with FSR, unfortunately, so even though when we use other Upscalers, we cannot use frame generation, which is FSR frame generation. Now, when we do go into a different Upscaler, I would recommend you cycle through all the presets, because as you can see, we were stuck at 20% sharpness when native defaults to 100% sharpness, and it does make a difference on the default experience. So yeah, let's do that, and then we're going to quit out of the game completely, and we are going to relaunch the game. We're going to do that for every preset. So for people on RDNA 2 like me and also RDNA 3, Gothic 1 Remake currently gives us FSR 3.1.4 in-game. So let's go back into settings over here, graphics. As you can see, we are on AMD FSR 3.1 and a native resolution. We're going to go into load game and load the exact same save file over here. So yeah, starting with FSR native AA, the image is very sharp, but it is also very grainy because I think 100% on native resolution is kind of over sharpened over here. Yeah, you can see it in the hair, and there's a lot of noise instability everywhere, and shimmering is still present, unfortunately. But performance is pretty solid. So in my own testing, I was hovering around 74 FPS in this exact same scene. Now we are hovering around 71 FPS on average. And yeah, let's give it a whirl and do the runaround. over here, see how everything looks. Okay. So yeah, as you can see, I'm not moving the camera in any way right now. Everything is static, but we can see simmering not only behind the wall over there, we can see simmering also on the floor and on the water. And the aliasing is still a problem, as we saw over there with the ropes when we go close and when the camera is moving. So let's move on to FSR 3.1.4 quality over here. I'm gonna go with settings, graphics. Gonna move to quality. As you can see, automatically it moves the sharpening intensity to 80. Nothing else is changed. We are still at the quality preset of Gothic very high. So let's go on ahead and quit out of the game. And as you can see, FSR quality is rougher than what I expected. Pixel instability is very visible. Simmering gets worse, and the graininess and noise are also worse. The performance boost is tiny as well. We can see on average, we get like 77 FPS, especially when we start walking around. It's better than the TSR version, but yeah, it's not nothing, but for this image quality trade-off, it is not enough for me, basically. This is FSR 3.1.4 quality, so we are basically upscaling from 720p. Let's do our little run around over here. As you can see, ropes still alias, unfortunately. Take a look at the grass. Okay. We had a dip of below 60 FPS in a different place. A lot of instability over there at the shadows and everything. Yeah, a lot of simmering. So foliage, weeds, grass, fine detail look bad, even though we are only on quality mode. So that was very surprising for me. Finally, let's check the FSR performance mode. So let's go into our graphical settings over here. We're going to go with performance. We're going to stick with performance, not ultra performance, because not all Upscalers have that, and I want to be able to do an apples to apples comparison, basically. And yeah, now, boy oh boy, FSR performance. So this is FSR 3.1.4 performance preset, and it is a much bigger visual hit, as you can see. And the performance uplift is just not there. We get worse performance, and you can see that texture quality drops hard. The image gets unstable as heck. Simmer gets worse, and everything looks smudged and noisy. Even during my testing, when I was not recording, performance was sometimes worse than quality. Even when in the same location, I was hovering around 75 FPS on the exact same save file as we're doing right now. We can see actually that we're getting almost the exact same performance or worse. Let me give you the little run around over here. A lot of simmering, smudginess, pixel instability, noisiness, like no one would play like this, and the performance uplift is just not there. And this is basically the reality with Unreal Engine 5 games. What can we do, boys? What can we do? But yeah, basically the built-in FSR is usable in native AA if you like a sharper image, but the quality and performance presets for me do not give the balance I want. So now let's test XeSS 1.3.1. I'll go into the settings over here. As you can see, it says Intel XeSS 1.3.1. I'm going to click on this. Again, cycle through the presets over here so we get the correct sharpening intensity, and I'm going to quit out of the game. The XeSS version included here is pretty old at this point, and it shows, as we will see. So at native AA, the image is kind of okay, but it has the worst performance average out of the built-in solution so far. So we're hovering around 70 FPS on average, and during my testing I just had a 72 FPS on average. And shadows have a weird flickering issue over here, and the Upscaler really struggles with grain and noise patterns, and in some cases the image behind those, like the hair and stuff, looks like you can see the checkerboard like technique or pattern they were trying to use to calm that down, like the noisiness and the graininess. But yeah, I think it kind of fails. So let me do the little run around over here. Yeah, the shadows issue over here, and some kind of flashing or blooming issue. Very, very weird issues with this old version of XeSS over here. We get simmering. It's not that bad because this adds some blurriness even though we are at 100% sharpness and native AA. Foliage also has some issues. Aliasing is also still an issue even on native AA. And this is kind of a pattern with almost all of the Upscalers we're going to test. And I think the one advantage is that the simmer can look a little calmer, as I mentioned before, because the image is softer overall. And basically, yeah, the softness is not free. It is covering problems by smearing the image in general. And as you can see, those like popping lights are a repeating problem. It's not just a one-off. Let's go with the built-in XeSS quality, not ultra quality plus, not ultra quality quality. And as you can see, the sharpening intensity is at 57 for some reason. And as you can see, XeSS quality gives us a small performance boost, and I average here about 75 FPS, but the image quality takes a major hit, as you can see over here, and it gets that thin layer of Vaseline look that I often notice with XeSS in games where the implementation is not great. So let's do the little run over here. It's pretty much a big yikes in my opinion, but what can you do? 52 FPS over there, wow, okay. Smudge fest for the foliage. A lot of weird stuff happening to the grass. Our hair, NPC's hair look very, very weird. So yeah, foliage, grass, character hair, NPC hair, everything loses all of their detail basically. And guess what? With XeSS performance, this is going to be worse. Aliasing is also pretty bad over here. Let's go on ahead and test performance. So we're going to go with performance and 28 sharpening over here. We're gonna quit. This one is bad. The performance uplift is not there. It's not that it's not strong enough, it's just not there. And the image looks far worse than it should, basically. Texture detail has already disappeared, as you can see, even on our clothes and our skin and everything. The hair kind of gone. Everything gets blurrier. And all the issues we just talked about get amplified to over 9,000, boys. As you can see over here, I'm just going to do the run. You can see, oh, this beautiful green smudge. Is it grass? Is it smudge? Nobody knows. Did get a dip under 60 FPS over here, so probably the engine tries to load something over and over again. Still, we get some instability and shimmering, but it's not that bad. The trees look awful, especially from a distance, and we're getting almost the exact same performance as we did with the quality preset for XeSS. But yeah, as with a lot of Unreal Engine titles, this is a repeating pattern. There is no optimization, unfortunately. It's just not worth it with this much of a visual hit. So XeSS 1.3.1 is simply showing its age over here, and I do not really understand why the game shipped with such an outdated version of it, seriously. Now, before we move on to OptiScaler, It is worth mentioning that the built-in FSR option is the only built-in Upscaler path that gives us frame generation in this game. So if we go to settings, we can test this out. I'm going to go into graphics, AMD FSR 3.1.4, and we're going to try this with the native AA option. And obviously, to make sure this is applied correctly, we're going to completely exit out of the game and reload it. So yeah, the built-in frame generation performs decently, as you can see, especially if you combine it with FSR native AA. But sadly, even though this is FSR 3.1, as I mentioned before, frame generation is not decoupled here, so we cannot pair it with TSR or XeSS, even if we wanted to from the game menu. And that limits the usefulness of the built-in options. As you can see, it does perform pretty nicely. I don't see any ghosting over here, but we have all the issues we already had with FSR, even on native AA. It is over sharpened at the default preset without touching any of the other options over here. It is grainy. There is a lot of pixel instability even on the native AA option. We can see the shimmering is still there. The shimmering is still there. As you can see, I'm not touching the camera, but in the water or whatever that wet surface is on the floor, you can see there's a lot of shimmering. We can see the shimmering over there behind the planks when the light comes in or through, and then the trees and stuff have that instability, the foliage in general. That's pretty much the experience we get with the built-in Upscalers. We're gonna get FSR4 going and see how much we can improve this experience we just had. So we're going to use one of this channel's favorite tools. It's called OptiScaler, and I've done multiple videos on this. But quick warning before we start, only use the official OptiScaler GitHub, the official Discord link from that page, or the legitimate Nexus mod page mentioned by the OptiScaler team. There are fake sites around, and this is not the kind of tool you want to download from a random link. Now, for this video, I'm going to be using the OptiScaler version 0.9.3 pre-3 build from the official dev Discord, and I'm installing it manually. The public GitHub release is different, and it might be updated by the time you watch this video. So check the latest note before copying my exact version number. But I am also using the FSR 4.0.2c modded int8 binary from the dev Discord, because OptiScaler itself does not ship with that file for older non-RDNA4 GPUs. And as always, I will have the official links in the description below. So from the official OptiScaler Discord channel, if you go to Opti Test Builds over here, you can see that the latest version is OptiScaler v 0.9.3 pre-3 over here. If we scroll a little bit down over here, we can click on this hyperlink and it will bring us to the download location. We can click on this download button over here to download this. And then if we click on this resources light, we can find this last message regarding FSR4 int8, and this is currently labeled, as you can see, as 4.0.2c, and it's guiding us through these DLL re-uploads messages over here to this version over here, which is FSR4 int8 4.0.2c with RDNA2 fix. And this is only targeted for RDNA2 and RDNA3 GPUs. If you are on any other card, do not use this, okay? Just use the defaults that come with OptiScaler. This is only meant for RDNA2 and RDNA3 GPUs, which means 6000 series, my kind of GPU, and 7000 series, okay? So we click on this download button over here, and we're pretty much done with our downloads. As you can see, this is the downloaded archive, and to make my life easier, I extract the OptiScaler archive into its own folder first. So let's go on ahead and do that. I'm gonna go with 7-zip and then extract to OptiScaler blah blah. It's gonna create its own folder over here. And as you can see, all the files have been extracted in here. Then I open up this FSR4 int8 4.0.2c file over here that we downloaded with 7-zip. And what I usually do is I just drag and drop it into this OptiScaler folder I just created, and I overwrite to replace the file in destination. And basically, this is giving us a prepared folder that we can copy into whatever game we want to install or test OptiScaler with. So now let's open up our Gothic 1 Remake installation folder. Now, if you own the game on Steam, this is going to be extremely easy. Just right-click on the game, go into Manage, and then Browse Local Files. But from here, we need to navigate to the folder where the actual game executable lives. So we're going to go with the G1R, then binaries, Win64, and as you can see, this is where the actual game binary lives. And now I want you guys to pay really close attention before changing anything. Back up the existing AMD Fidelity FX binary by renaming it and doing whatever you want. I like to add the .backup extension, as I'm going to show you right now. So we're going to go with the AMD_Fidelity FX_DX12.dll. I'm going to go right click, rename. I'm going to go to the end of this and add .backup and press enter, and boom, it's pretty much done. Now, if you try to run the game as is, it's not going to run. We need to copy all the files from OptiScaler first. And this way, if something breaks or you want to revert back later to this version of FSR for whatever reason, you have a clean path back. Just delete whatever files you copied over with OptiScaler after you uninstall it, if there are any remaining folders, and rename this back to AMD blah blah .dll, delete the .backup extension we just added, and it's gonna work just fine. Now we need to copy the necessary OptiScaler files into the game folder. And for this install, I'm copying the basics along with the Upscaler binaries, but I'm leaving behind files I'm not going to use. I usually like to go Control-A to select everything and deselect the stuff I'm not going to use. So set up Linux, and then this README and this licenses folder we're not going to be using. I'm going to right click and copy, then right click and paste. And if you follow the same backup process, you should not see any overwrite pop-ups at this stage. So now that the files are in place, we're going to double click the setup_windows.bat and follow the prompts on our screen. Just follow the prompts for your specific hardware, because I'm on an AMD RDNA 2 base system. If you're on a different kind of setup, just follow the instructions on your screen, as you can see over here. And first of all, we need to choose a file name for OptiScaler. We're going to go with the XGI, since this game is running on DirectX. And after we press 1, we're going to press enter. Then it is asking us if we're using an NVIDIA GPU or AMD Intel GPU. I'm on AMD, so I'm going to press 1. If you're on NVIDIA, you have to press 2, okay? So we're going to press 1, and then we're going to press enter. And then it is asking us if we're going to try to use the DLSS inputs to replace the FSR XeSS, and it enables spoofing. It is required for DLSS frame generation, reflex to anti-lag 2, and all that good stuff. We're going to say 1 for yes. And as you can see, we do have access to OptiPatcher. We're going to say yes, we do want OptiPatcher, because this is going to enable us to utilize all that stuff without enabling spoofing, and spoofing adds overhead. So it means that it will translate to worse performance. So if we can do that without spoofing, this is the best. And once this is finished, the installation side is done. So now we're going to launch Gothic 1 Remake once again. As you can see on the bottom left of our screen, we get the OptiScaler pop-up, so that means the installation was successful. Now over here, before we do anything else, the first thing we want to do is go into settings and open up the graphics settings, and we're going to select NVIDIA DLSS 4.5, it says over here, as our Upscaler. We're going to go with native AA over here. We're going to go back to the main menu screen, and then we're going to press the insert key on our keyboard to open the OptiScaler overlay. Now from here, we are going to select FSR3.x as our Upscaler, and we're going to click on this change Upscaler button. And we have to make sure that FSR4.0.2c, as I see over here, is selected in the drop down below it in the FFX settings section over here. And this is only true for RDNA 2 and RDNA 3 cards and some of the RTX older generation cards like RTX 2000 and 3000 cards. And now here is a setting I want to explain clearly because it changed from some of my older advice I gave you in older videos and that were using older versions of OptiScaler. Basically, leave the use FSR input values checked. And the short version is this based on the wiki that I've read from the OptiScaler team. OptiScaler can reuse the game's FSR and fidelity effects input values like the camera and depth information the game is already providing instead of guessing from a less ideal path. And basically better inputs give the Upscaler better reconstruction data. So for this game, leaving that checked helps avoid extra weirdness. And in the future, probably for most games, we're gonna have this option checked from now on. Now, exactly above this, on the frame generation section, we're going to select the DLSS G via Streamline option over here for the input. And then for the output, I would suggest you guys test between FSR FG, as you can see over here from these options, then normal FSR FG and XeFG for your own systems. And on my setup, XeFG combined with XCLL works best in this game, so that is what I'm going to be using. So I'm going to select XeFG, and if you see this red warning as I'm seeing over here telling you that you need to restart the game, do not ignore it because nothing is going to work correctly or at all if you ignore this. We need to click save settings over here and then close, and then we need to restart Gothic 1 Remake. Otherwise, as you can see, even if we wanted to use, let's say, frame generation, it's not available to us because it hasn't been injected correctly. That's why we need to restart the game. So we're gonna quit out of this game. Now, after the game loads completely into the main menu, again, we're gonna press insert for one more time, and we're gonna check for any messages over here. You may now be able to set frame generation to active, or you may see a yellow font warning telling you you need to restart the game one last time for the settings to apply correctly, because that's not possible when the game is running. In my case, right now in this installation, I do not see the second warning with a yellow font. If you do see it, please do exactly what the overlay tells you, because skipping these restarts is how you end up blaming the tool for a half-applied setup, basically. Now, we can activate frame generation if we need to. As you can see in our graphics settings, we can enable frame generation. For now, we're gonna go with off, and we're gonna test with native AA. And yeah, we're finally ready to test FSR4.0.c and Intate version in Gothic 1 Remake. So you can see the image is immediately cleaner, graininess is reduced a lot, noise is reduced, and thankfully the heavy ghosting is completely gone, as you can see. Let me do the little round we were making. We're hovering around 66 FPS around here. Let's see if we get the dip. Yes, we do. 52 FPS over there. So basically that's an engine optimization problem. Foliage looks so much better and we don't get that simmering over there. Aliasing is pretty much gone over there at the ropes. This looks pretty nice, and the grass is very, very clear, not smudgy. This is really, really good. So yeah, a lot of the details that looked aliased or unstable with the built-in upscalers now look much better. And this is basically the first mode where the image starts to feel like the game is finally rendering the way it should. Now let's switch to quality and try this out. Go into settings, graphic, I'm gonna go to quality, and to make sure everything's working fine, we're gonna completely exit out of the game. On the quality preset, the game looks excellent. We get a performance uplift compared to native AA, and I'm averaging around 75 FPS in this particular scene compared to the 70 to 71 FPS from before. Let's walk around the old camp and see how this looks and feels. Over this side. Below 60 over here, but the dip wasn't that steep this time. Foliage looks really, really nice. We get no weirdness with the shadows, right? No shimmering. Check the ground, not moving the camera. Yeah, no shimmering over there. We're pretty good. Let's go over to the other side, see how things look. Move the camera quickly, especially in the dark background over here. I don't see any ghosting. Shimmering is practically gone, pixelation is gone. Foliage and grass looks far better than they did with the built-in options on the quality preset. And for my setup, this is probably the sweet spot. Keeps the image clean, gives us more performance. It does not feel like we are paying for frames by turning the game into soup, basically. Now let's test performance. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing. Settings, graphical settings over here, and we're gonna go with performance. Okay, here we do not see as much of a performance uplift as I would expect, which looks more like a game side optimization limit than an Upscaler limit, but at the same time, keep in mind that FSR4 int 8 for RDNA2 and RDNA3 have a far bigger performance hit than the native FP8 Upscalers that RX 9000 series, basically RDNA4, use, because they lack the hardware. So the harder we push the Upscaler to upscale the image from a lower resolution, then you know, we have diminishing returns. So you can see we're averaging around 79 to 80 FPS over here. The image quality retention is honestly impressive over here. And when you remember how low the internal resolution is, so if I press the insert key, you can see we are upscaling from 540p to 1080p over here. So that is very impressive. And obviously this is not perfect. Like, some textures get a little bit softer over here, and in motion you can see artifacts if you look really close for them. Like, you have to really be, you know, looking for them. I usually cannot find any. So let's do our run over here. In motion, sometimes maybe we can see some weirdness around the grass over here or on the floor, you know, when you're not really going to be looking at those things when you're playing the game, but in battle situations, maybe this is going to be more apparent. Either way, compared to the built-in performance modes, the difference is night and day. So if you absolutely need the frames, FSR4 performance is usable in a way the other performance modes are not. And we are hitting a 79 to 80 FPS average around the old camp. But yeah, my recommendation is pretty simple. I'm gonna go into the settings screen over here and then graphics options. I would probably go with native AA if I was going for image quality, but for the best balance, I would go with quality over here. But yeah, in general, for my gameplay, I tend to use quality more often than not, and then I enable frame generation and I set it to always. And then I keep reflex on, which is on by default, and then reflex boost I also set to on over here. And I would recommend keeping those NVIDIA technologies on, because through OptiScaler they translate to either XeLL or anti-lag 2. Now I'm going to go back over here, then I'm going to press the insert key on my keyboard, and I'm going to set this frame generation XEFG option to active, then go to the frame rate section over here, and I will set XeLL frame rate limit to 3 frames below my monitor's maximum refresh rate, so I can have FreeSync basically always on. I'm going to hit apply limit, then save settings and close. And basically after you restart your game, you can enjoy Gothic 1 Remake looking cleaner and feeling smoother than ever. Yeah, as you can see, we're averaging around 68 FPS, 70 FPS as our base FPS, and then it is frame generating around 140 to 142 FPS over here, and we can do our usual round. The game feels really good. There's no input lag whatsoever, and it feels extremely smooth. Let's go down this little slope over here. I didn't feel the stutter over there because the frame rate is really above 45 FPS in general, even with that big stutter we're getting over there, and it feels extremely smooth. Now, if your system still struggles, I would lower the heaviest graphics settings before dropping to ugly Upscaler modes, if I'm being honest. So I wouldn't go with balance because we don't see a lot of performance uplift, and I would just lower some graphical settings. But the big win here is not just more FPS, it is that the game stops looking wrong in motion and it doesn't look horrific with all of the built-in upscalers basically. So that is my Gothic 1 Remake optimization path for RDNA 2, RDNA 3 and supported hardware. The built-in options are not useless, but none of them gave me the balance I wanted. TSR fixes the worst ghosting but gets really noisy, and then I'm not even gonna talk about its upscaling capabilities in this game. FSR is sharp but very unstable. XeSS is just too soft and too old. FSR4 through OptiScaler gives me the cleanest overall result, especially in quality mode. If this helped you make Gothic 1 Remake look cleaner and run smoother, smash that like button, subscribe, hit that bell if you never want to miss a GeekJ video. If you want to take it further, consider joining the GeekJ squad, and remember that members get perks like loyalty badges, emojis, priority replies, members only videos, 24-hour early access to all of my videos, members only polls, shoutouts, naming credits, perks, and behind the scenes access at the higher tiers. So again, massive shout out to my channel architects, which is the higher tier, RSSTR and Costas Dari. You guys are legends. And of course, you can also support the channel by dropping a super thanks if you're feeling generous. Leave your GPU upscaler preset and your old camp FPS in the comments. I read every single one of them, and I'm gonna see you in the next one, guys. Bye bye.